Hey, welcome to Clarity with Nikki. I'm Nikki Novoselsky, and this is where we get real about creating a life you freaking love. So let's get into it. I am always so thrilled you're here spending some time with me because today we're diving deep into why your mindfulness routine might not actually be doing the trick to getting you to that coveted fulfillment. If you are practicing yoga, you're meditating, you're working out, you're eating healthy, you're journaling, you're listening to podcasts like this, you're reading self-help books, and you're still like, Nikki, nothing actually really truly is changing, and I'm still a little bit miserable in my life. Why? What's going on? I'm doing all the things. I'm at the end of my rope. I don't understand. What more could I be doing? Oh, if I had a nickel for every time someone told me that, we'd be a rich gal, because it is not enough to simply just do yoga, to exercise, to meditate, all the things, if you're not really fully going in deep and embodying it. Here's a little soulful saga time. I remember it was my sophomore year of college. So I was about, 19, 20 years old. I was really stressed out with just all of my classes, with socially trying to fit in, with trying to get good grades, figuring out my future, all of the things. And I was beating myself up in my head about a majority of the time. And I was quite miserable. I was comparing myself to other girls and being like, oh, I'm not pretty enough to be in a relationship. I was constantly watching what I was eating, worrying that I was going to gain weight, worrying about what I looked like. It was just a constant pressure and stress. And there was no like, yay, you're doing amazing. It was just constantly beating myself down. So I remember I turned to yoga, and I would go to yoga every day. I had this hot yoga studio that I absolutely loved and adored, which honestly propelled me onto my own yoga path. But I went every single day. It was almost like my therapy. I'd run to get to class on time. I absolutely loved it. I ended up teaching there, not as a yoga teacher, but I did like an exercise class there because I just love the studio so much. Fast forward to my senior year, where I was actually working at a nonprofit. I had a nonprofit major, so I had studied and gotten all the good grades and all of it, and I finally got a job after college, actually during my senior year, because I graduated in 3 years. And I got a job working as a program director at this nonprofit, which I loved. It was a great little job. I felt really aligned. I felt like I was making a difference and really helping. But I remember being like, is this it? So I just studied all those years and had all that stress and all that pressure for this. Like, it felt like a shock to the system. Like, you get to the top and the view is just gray clouds, you know? Like, you're really putting in this journey and the destination isn't as amazing with like celebratory balloons as you think it's gonna be. And I felt let down for sure. So I started going to yoga all the time, meditating. I remember I was reading a bunch of self-help books at the time and listening to Oprah's Super Soul podcast. And she talked about gratitude and writing a gratitude list and really journaling everything, and I did that. I remember I was writing poetry all the time. I had this like little poetry book that I would write all of my feelings in, and I would journal and play guitar and write my 3 things that I was grateful for. Yet I was still a miserable wreck. I still hated my body. I still was being mean to myself in my mind. And I came to this point where I'm like, none of this is actually helping. Maybe I'm just broken beyond repair. Nothing's gonna fix me. And maybe you've had this thought. I've had so many people come to me and be like, I think I'm just broken. None of this actually works and none of this helps. And I think we're in the society nowadays that is promoting mindfulness, meditation. It's like this new buzzword, woo-woo, yay, yeah, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, do it, woohoo. However, I always say in my yoga classes, if you are practicing for 1 hour, yet the other 23 hours of the day, all of that just goes out the window, then that's not really yoga. You have to start to embody the work in the moments. And we're going to talk about today, what do I mean by that? How can you actually start to take what you're learning and go forward in your life to find true fulfillment? Let's talk about it. Let's do it. So this is gonna be a good one. I mean, all the episodes are good ones, but like, let's buckle in, strap in, get the popcorn, get the listening ears open, because we're gonna be dropping some knowledge. I have a client who came to me saying this exact same thing. He was like, Nikki, I've been meditating for like 3 hours. Not every day, but every so often. I work out all the time. I'm reading self-help books. I'm listening to the podcast, yet I'm still burnt out. I'm still miserable and I'm still stressed. And we started to do some deeper work. And he finally got to a point where he's like, oh my gosh, I feel so different. I'm embodying it. I'm integrating. I feel fulfilled for the first time in my career. And that's when all of the celebration was going off in my head, because I'm like, we're on to something here. We're not actually just going through the motions, we're embodying it, we're integrating it. So what did we do to get him to that point? When we do yoga, yes, it's calming the nervous system. When we're meditating, yes, we're calming the mind. However, we still have intrinsic beliefs about ourselves. So let's go back to me that senior year when I was working and stressed out all the time and wondering what the heck I was doing. I was going to yoga, and then I would go home and look in the mirror and really just go at it. I'd be like, ugh, but you have so much acne, and ugh, your arms are really thick, and your stomach, you have a lot of fat there, da 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 da. And that's not actually practicing kindness and compassion to myself. And I'd wake up and I'd be like, ugh, I gotta go to work again. I'm not making enough money. And it was just this constant barrage of negativity. So even though I was doing meditation and yoga, that 1 hour I felt good, and then I'd go right back to being mean and thinking all these horrible things about myself of, ugh, you're not pretty enough to ever have a relationship, or ugh, you're not worthy enough to ever have a job that is gonna pay you a lot of money, and da 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 da, whatever that is. And so we need to go deep into ourselves and understand what is really there. How do we do this? Well, I call it pulling the hose. Here's our segment called Transformation Tactics. In Transformation Tactics, we're going to talk about what I call pulling the hose. This is the pulling the hose technique. Now, I have a vivid memory of myself in my childhood home in my backyard with a huge hose that was rolled up like a water hose, this green hose that was rolled up in a circle, and we would connect a sprinkler to it. And we'd had this cute little sprinkler that was a little daisy, and it would just go all over the yard in different spots, and we'd jump over the water, yay, 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 whatever. So sometimes the water would go out, and we'd be like, what's happening? What's happening with the hose? And we'd look at the hose, we'd turn on the water, we'd turn it off again, we would look at the connection, we'd look at everything. We're like, what's going on here? The water is still not coming out. I call this pulling the hose technique because on the outside, we're doing the connection, we're maybe doing the yoga, we're doing the meditation. We have to pull the hose all the way, this huge spiral hose. It's probably about 100 feet or whatever. We're pulling it off of this, I don't even know, it's like a spinny device. If you were to think of like a fire truck, that hose that's wrapped up, we need to pull this hose all the way to the end and inspect it and be like, is there a hole anywhere in this hose that maybe the water, or is there a kink, or is there whatever that the water is getting trapped in and not actually going out the end? I'm calling it pulling the hose because that's ultimately what we're doing with ourselves. We're not just turning the water off and turning it back on. We're not just going to sleep and then waking up. We're not just undoing the sprinkler and then putting the sprinkler back on and then hoping, poof, yay, it works. Oh, we're not just going to a yoga class and then after we're magically cured. We're literally examining ourselves and being like, where are we holding these subconscious negative beliefs about ourselves? Let's use examples here. So if you're wanting a relationship, it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna go on the dating apps and I'm gonna find someone. Yeah, maybe. But what beliefs do you have about yourself that you're bringing to the table when you're dating? So, do you believe that you're not good enough? Or that you can never find someone that actually is going to love you back in the way that you love them? And why? So go into that. If that is your belief, why do you believe that? Where did that come from? Can you give that version of you compassion? Can you start to really understand, oh, well, I believe that about myself because that's the evidence I saw when I was little of I never got any attention from my family and I just believe that I'm never worthy enough, right? So can you have that awareness about what's going on with yourself and what story you're currently holding today that's holding you back from getting what you want? Let's utilize it in a work scenario. So let's say you really want to pursue a different career or start your own business, but you have these voices in your head of, oh, I could never do that. I'm not smart enough to do that, or I'll never make enough money in that. And it's like, well, those beliefs are actually holding you back from going after what you want. And where did those come from? Where did you learn that you must work a certain job or work 60 plus hours a week in order to be considered successful and make enough money? Was it your family? Did you see others around you working tons and tons of hours? Did you feel like you always had to put in hard work in order to be recognized? So noticing, pulling the hose and understanding your own past experiences in order to understand what you're currently bringing to the table. So let's go back to me as an example because hopefully I'll talk about me and then hopefully it resonates with you. So I was doing yoga and meditation and I was desperately really wanting to find someone to be with. I wanted a partner. But I had these beliefs that I was never good enough, so that any love or any interest anyone showed me, I was like, do they really like me? Oh, they could never like me because I didn't like me. And so I needed to go in and start to address that, start to address that little version of me with love and compassion and understand that, and then start to flip that thought process. So start to flip, oh, I'm not good enough to find someone, to change it to, yeah, I'm really confident and I have so many great qualities about myself. And I'm sure there is someone out there who will match me. And how can I believe that? At my core. It's one thing to say an affirmation, it's another thing to fully believe it. So, how can you start to really shift the perspective that you have and give evidence to yourself that this past belief that you once had is no longer available? We're putting that belief on trial and being like, well, what evidence do we have that supports that now? Because that's in the past. Do we have new evidence that can really shift our perspective towards something new? So for example, with me, I have new evidence that I've gone on many dates where people are lovely and they really enjoy me and they like me as a person, and I've had some great relationships with people. So that belief no longer can take over my life if I don't let it. I've worked really hard to now start to shift that belief into, yeah, I'm so worthy to have a loving relationship when I want it, when I want to call it in. Same thing with making money, same thing with the job that you're in. Can you start to fully believe it and find evidence that it is true so you can hold that and really start to do the work and letting go these old layers of you that are energetically blocking you from getting what it is that you want. So pull that hose and understand what is subconsciously there. Can you become aware of what's subconsciously there that's keeping that little kink? That hose is kinked so that the water can't come out. You're not getting to that goal that it is that you're wanting. So the real problem isn't mindfulness. It's not that you're not doing enough yoga. It's not that you're not doing enough meditation. The real problem is the gap in actually applying it and going deep and implementing it in your life. I see people all the time, and even me, will have breakthroughs of, oh my gosh, I feel so worthy and I feel so calm and relaxed after yoga and all these things. And then the minute something comes up in your life that can provoke anger or frustration, it's like we fall back into that trap. So when something does provoke you, can you take a moment and stop and you start to respond differently to the stimulus? So it's not just doing yoga, it's doing yoga outside of your life in the sense that you get to pause and choose how you're responding to the situation. And we do so by slowing down, we do so by breathing in, we do so by choosing to become present and aware of what's going on so that we can shift and change our thoughts, which shift and change our actions, which shift and change our behaviors. By the way, if you're wanting to really implement this in your life, I have a bunch of different options for you. You can start with some smaller courses that I have that'll help you get over your mindset blocks in order to start taking steps towards the life that you really love. Or you can join my membership where I give you personalized support to help you on your journey. Or we can even work one-on-one together. I'd love to hop on a call with you and see how I can best support you. All of these links are down in the description, so take a look at them. I would love to keep going deep with you and not just on a little podcast, but we can be face to face so that we can get you doing the deep work so that you can have the life it is that you are wanting. I would love that for you. One final thing. Always, 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 we talk about science on this podcast. So how is this supported with science? I want to go into our neuro nugget. Dun, 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 dun. We love psychology here. And we're always talking about psychology because the brain loves to grasp onto the science in order to really start to make some change in our lives. So let's talk about Leon Festinger. He's a pioneering psychologist who introduced us to the concept of cognitive dissonance back in the 1950s. So he found that when our actions clash with our beliefs, it creates this psychological discomfort called dissonance. So for instance, if you believe in the benefits of mindfulness, but you're not seeing the changes in your life, you can feel stuck. You're like, okay, do I actually believe in mindfulness then? Because what's happening here? It's not actually occurring for me. There's something called the doomsday study. One of Festinger's famous studies involved a doomsday cult led by a woman named Marianne Keech. She predicted the world would end on a specific date. And when this prophecy failed, rather than abandoning the beliefs that they had, the cult members rationalized their faith. And they said, our faith actually prevented this disaster. This is an example of cognitive dissonance in action. People are adjusting their beliefs to reduce the discomfort of this conflicting information. So, for example, let's use it in our everyday life. Maybe you have a belief that you're like, I need to make 6 figures a year in order to be deemed as successful. And then maybe you get a job that you really, really, really want and it's like so aligned with you. And then it's not 6 figures and you might change that belief and be like, actually, I don't need to be making 6 figures to be deemed as successful. Successful people are just people who deem themselves successful, right? So when the actions and the beliefs and the tangible thing and the belief don't line up, we have this like dissonance. We're like, what do we actually believe? I don't know. How does this relate to everything we're talking about? Well, I had a lot of people come to me and be like, Nikki, I am jaded. And I'm like, why are you jaded? And they're like, I'm doing all the things. I'm journaling, I'm manifesting, I'm meditating, I'm doing yoga, and I'm still not getting what I want. So I'm jaded at the universe because maybe none of this shit is real. And I go, you know what? Honestly, that is so fair. That's super fair. So fair. However, how can we change the belief instead of like, oh, yoga, mindfulness, and all of that's going to completely shift my life? Yes, it will. How can we shift the belief to we're really going to start doing the deep work? We're going to go in and start to shift who it is we are, shifting our identity, shifting our thoughts, shifting our actions in order to align ourselves to the person it is that we want to be. And also, how can we just let that be along the way? We put so much pressure that yoga and meditation and mindfulness are going to be this elixir to fulfillment and all of the things, which, yes, there's so many physiological and psychological benefits that they're amazing. Continue to do them for sure. But also, it's externalizing something to give you what you want. When really, how can we become responsible internally for what it is? So maybe you're not getting what you want. How can you allow that to be okay? How can you allow yourself to have patience? How can you allow yourself to understand the uncomfortable emotions that come up, the anger, the frustration, all of that to come up, and just trust that you'll continue on your path in the way that you will? And maybe you don't get exactly what you want this instant, but you find presence and you find fulfillment in this moment, right? So just understanding cognitive dissonance can really help you understand your own thoughts and your own actions and the beliefs that we have around our actions and different things like that. We love throwing in the science as well to help the brain understand. So, our brain hack of the day. You're going to pull the hose. You're going to really understand what thoughts you're still carrying and what identities and stories you believe about yourself. And then who is it that you want to be? What person is it that you want to be? Is it that you want to be someone who's successful making a lot of money? How can you trust with patience that you'll get there? And what thoughts and stories are holding you back from that person? Is it that you don't believe that you'll ever be successful or that you can make a lot of money? Is it that you're worried to put yourself out there because you're nervous of what people are going to say about you? That's stopping you from actually starting. So, understanding, becoming aware of what are the stories you're telling yourself, and then we can start to shift and change. And of course, you don't have to do this alone. I love the quote by Albert Einstein where he says, "You cannot solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it." And so you don't have to do this alone. If you're wanting more help and more support, I have a bunch of different options for a bunch of different budgets to really support you and get you to where you want to be so you're feeling more fulfillment, more aligned, and like have a zestier, exciting life, calling in your partner, calling in the dream job, calling in this dream person of you. Like you get to be your own dream person and just loving your life. So I'd love to help you with that. Thanks for tuning in to Clarity with Nikki. By being here, you've already taken the first step to creating a life that's uniquely yours and getting off autopilot to find real fulfillment. If you're ready to go deeper, I've got a free masterclass to help you on your journey, and I highly recommend starting there. So check the link in the description to get on your way. And come hang out with me on Instagram at Clarity with Nikki for more tips, inspiration, and behind the scenes fun. If you loved today's episode, I'd be so grateful if you could take just a minute to leave me a review, because your feedback helps get this podcast out to more people who need it. So keep thriving, keep shining, and keep creating your dream life. You've got this. Much love, and I'll see you in the next episode.